Evening. I will call this meeting of the Lake Mill City Council to order for Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. Sam, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Curler.
Here.
Ms. Schmager.
Here.
Ms. Quedno.
Here.
Mr. Fields.
Here.
Mr. Waters.
Here.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next agenda item is Councilmember Board Reports and Acceptance of Meeting Minutes. So we have a City Council from March 18th, Police and Fire Commission from February 20th, and the Plan Commission from February 25th. Are there any comments or corrections on any of these minutes? Okay, seeing none, we will accept those into our public records. Next item is correspondence, and I'll start to my left with Mary. Would you like to go through your correspondence from the last period?
Sure. I received a question about municipal code regarding adult entertainment and exposure of minors. Call about Century Site. I had a conversation with Chris Lopak regarding his claim. Several emails that were intended for Parks Board topics and some inquiries on Sandy Beach.
Great, thank you. Steve?
I had a similar one on municipal code. I also had one email on the follow-up on the Cottage Hotel after our last meeting. One on Sandy Beach ideas. Some updates on the Lake Mills, the Fargo Public Library, and an update from the Rock Lake Activity Center.
Thank you. Greg?
My email's down right now, but with IT support, hopefully I'll have that fixed by the end of this meeting. So
Okay, sounds.
if anyone sent me an email, I'll respond to it by the end of the week. Thank you.
Okay, I will, Michelle's just getting her computer up and going, so I'll summarize mine and then go to her last. So I had similar correspondence, follow up on the Cottage Inn, some suggestions for Sandy Beach Park redevelopment, the adult entertainment codes, and changes in RLAC and senior center operations. I also received a contact regarding solicitor licenses in the city and an invitation to state budget listening sessions. And Michelle, anything else?
The only thing I have to add, I received all of the other correspondences that have been mentioned, was a bird flu email from Anita Martin.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. So next are questions and public comment. The public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comments may also be made on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meetings law discourages actions by the council on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when starting your comments and fill out the sign-in sheet provided. If there's anyone attending online who wishes to speak, please type your name and address in the chat feature. So I know we have at least one person in the room who'd like to speak, so Mr. Lopak, if you want to come up. And then if there's anyone online who wishes to speak, again, please type your name and address in the chat feature so we can recognize you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Good evening.
Also, my wife mentioned that the live stream isn't online right now, so I don't know if that's normal.
Is that microphone on?
The microphone's on, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You said that the live stream is not on?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Maybe Dave can take a look at that.
Yeah. Thanks.
We'll check the YouTube on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Chris Lopak, 419 Campus Street. First off, I want to start off by thanking Mary for taking a couple hours out of her schedule to meet with me after the last city council meeting. It was truly nice having more than 3 minutes to share concerns and talk as neighbors and citizens looking to move forward and provide solutions to issues here in the city. Mary provides leadership that this city greatly needs. Last meeting, I started diving into the auditing side since I wasn't getting any questions answered. I want to continue that conversation. In the database, we have 4,645 trees documented. It's a significant number. However, 4,223 of those trees have no documented condition: good, fair, dead, excellent, poor. That is just shy of 91% of trees for the city of Lake Mills. Additionally, 4,237 trees have no measurable characteristics. Again, that's right around the 91% mark. How can we say that we're a tree community if we don't have a sense of what 91% of our trees look like? Their size, their overall condition, health, etc. And that's just what's documented. Who knows how many other trees are like mine and not even documented in our database? Why is this so important? You see, the original disallowance for my claim and the reasoning was that there was no record of my tree having any reported issues. I'm not a tree expert. I know more now than I did 6 months ago about trees, but the fact that my claim was denied because I didn't call the city and ask them to check on my tree is preposterous. The city of Lake Mills, which is known for being a tree community itself, doesn't have a true record of over 90% of your own trees. You're walking down a street, you have no idea what is going on with 9 out of 10 trees you pass. Think about that for a second as you drive home from here tonight. 9 out of 10 trees. Think about the size of the trees, the damage those trees can cause. Think about 9 out of 10 the next time you get a text from Randy over here letting us know power's out again because another tree fell on a power line. Think about 9 out of 10 the next time you get a claim denial in front of you for cars getting significant damage or totaled from codominant leads breaking and falling directly onto them. It's only a matter of time before somebody dies from this failure. And I want to be extremely clear, this is not the fault of the current group in the department. I have a ton of respect for those initiatives the current department is leading and tasked with, and appreciate the transparency and quick responses I've gotten when I reach out. They've been a great team to work with. This is the result of precedent set by city leadership who has skated by with the blanket discretionary immunity excuse and never taken a hard look at what falls under discretionary versus ministerial. How can the city say that you promote and protect the safety, health, and welfare of the general public? Additionally, how can you spend the latter part of tonight's meeting discussing city ordinances and plans around trees while this glaring issue is front and center? 9 out of 10. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment this evening? I see several folks online. Sam, is there anyone who's requested to speak? Okay, hearing none.
I'm sorry, no.
Oh, okay, thank you. Hearing none, we'll close public comment for this evening and move on. Our next agenda item is the city manager's report, and we have a police department report and the manager's report. So Drake, I'll turn that over to you.
Sure, there's a written report included in your packet. If there's any questions on it, there's a number of items there on our absentee voting. We've had significant turnout today as well, so those numbers have only grown since Election Day voting has occurred and continues for the next 52 minutes. Some information on building permits that have been pulled, all building permits, not only new construction. And then as you all know, we did complete our transition to Microsoft 365 Government. If you are still locked out of your accounts, please let Dave know. He's also reaching out to all the commissioners and boards that may have city email addresses to ensure that they maintain access. So if there's any questions, please let me know. We also do have our representatives from Ryan Brothers here. If you have any general questions of EMS service, they try to show up at least once a quarter. So if you have any questions of them, now would be an appropriate time to ask anything of them. I'm sure they'd be happy to come on up.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Drake or for the Ryan Brothers representatives? Mary?
I'm just curious, you mentioned you attended a meeting with local government leaders. Were there any issues that they are facing that we aren't in Lake Mills and could be maybe coming our way? Or is there anything you learned from that discussion that would be helpful for us to know?
We all largely face this similar issues. So there's housing is usually a topic of conversation. Regional economic development is a topic of conversation. There will be I guess, an EMS work group that I have been invited to attend and participate in on behalf of the city. That'll be starting in the next few weeks, I think perhaps in May. So EMS, public safety services come up. So the focus tends to be on regional. We do update on everything, on each community. We kind of go around, but EMS has been a consistent topic of conversation and one that's going to be continued in a more formal matter at the county level with the county work group that the county is setting up. So only thing I'd also add that I didn't add is I will be out of the office from the 18th and returning on the 29th. I will be largely unavailable. But if there's any issues that come up, the staff should be able to help you, and I will be able to be reached if there's an emergency.
Thank you. As long as Cody is here, I will have you come up because I've got a question for you. Since we only get to see you once a quarter, and I know you mentioned before the meeting, you don't get your data until the first of the month, so we don't have your regular report yet, but it's occurred to me, welcome. It's occurred to me that it's been a little over a quarter since we've expanded the EMS coverage to a couple of other communities, and I'm just wondering how that's going.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks for having me and thanks for inviting me up. So it's all been going really well from our standpoint. The call volume is tracking right on kind of what Chief Ross and I expected it to be. We've been able to handle it with our ambulances. Everything's worked out really well. I've had a few meetings with the chief and some of the neighboring township leadership or townships leaders, and they seem very happy with the way things are happening. Everything's been business as usual for us. Nothing unusual to report, really. Pretty standard, and everything's been working out really well. We feel like we have a pretty solid system in place. With our ambulance doing all the primary calls, the fire department's had great response on second out ambulances. We've had a few significant events in the area in the last couple months, but we've been able to handle it very well, and everything's been going really smooth.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other questions for Cody Lutzen, as long as he's up at the mic?
All
Great,
right.
and I know there will be some new leadership with elections in some of the neighboring townships, so you'll have some new people to work with there.
Yep, definitely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Drake on the city manager's report? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to council business. So our first item is Resolution 25-18. Sam, would you read that title for us, please?
Resolution 25-18, authorizing the city manager to execute a developer's agreement by and between the City of Lake Mills and Riverwood Holdings LLC for the development of Park Reserve Apartments.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 25-18, authorizing the city manager to execute a development agreement by and between the City of Lake Mills and Riverwood Holdings LLC for the development of Park Reserve Apartments.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Fields and a second from Ms. Quednow. So staff, can we get an overview, please?
Sure. There's a memo included in your packet. The development agreement that's before you is a largely standard agreement, something that you've seen before with other developments. This particular development, the land that it's going to sit on has been planned since really the beginning of the Brookstone Meadows subdivision. It's part of the original plat. The zoning has been in place for at least 20 years, if not more. And so it was always planned when this got started out that this was going to be for a multifamily development. So at the completion of it, it is going to be a total of 144 units at its completion. It'll be a gradual build out as the buildings fill up. So you won't just see every building start getting built overnight, but as they're leased, it'll continue in a gradual process. The development agreement includes things such as the installation of on-site and off-site public and private improvements. These are at the developer's expense. There's a timeline requirement of certain public improvements in there, insurance requirements, performance surety, warranty periods, the process for how we accept those public improvements that the developer installs, as well as ongoing maintenance responsibilities for some of the features that are installed in there. One particular piece that you'll see in there, this development agreement does waive the collection of any park or parkland-related fees, including park impact fees. Part of this goes back to the original agreement that was executed in 1998. The parkland dedication was certainly fulfilled. The developer likely dedicated more than was required at the time and allowed for the construction of Wallace Park. So we did talk to the developer at this. That agreement did not specifically waive the park impact fee. That's the per unit fee that's in our code. I believe that the impact fee existed sometime around when that 1998 agreement was executed. I believe it was 1995. We did speak with Mr. Giusti, and it was his understanding with the city at the time that those fees would be waived. It's not explicit in the agreement, so it is waived in this development agreement. It does require your approval and authorization. The only thing I would note is the developer is not asking for any assistance, so there's no TIF assistance, there's no nothing that he is asking of the city in order to make this development move forward. Something that has become rarer in recent years for development. And so the city staff is comfortable recommending the development agreement as drafted. And for that park impact fee, we look at the significant donation of land, dedication of land of Wallace Park, the lack of a request for other types of public assistance, the significant investment that's being made. This does reside within the TIF district, and so with a development that is not requesting any assistance, no obligation for the TIF, that does move toward the city council's goal of the extension of CP Avenue. So it does reach one of your strategic objectives that was identified with the adoption of that TID. And so that is kind of the overview of it. Mr. Giusti is here. I know you're familiar with him before. Just so everyone remembers, Riverwood, Mr. Giusti's company, is the one that's responsible for the build-out of the Brookstone Meadows subdivision. So a significant chunk of the single-family housing construction that we've seen in Lake Mills over a number of years has been a result of Mr. Giusti's investment in Lake Mills. So with that, I will open it up to any questions you may have of us. Mr. Giusti has been a good partner for the city. He's certainly been very responsive to the city and its request of anything throughout this review process and ones before. So I can't, I speak very highly of Mr. Giusti. There's no arguments with Mr. Giusti when it comes. There's discussions and sometimes we disagree, but we've never had an issue coming to a solution. He is always covered, we pass on consultant costs, obviously, and sometimes those can be significant for reviews, and we have never had an issue with payment or anything of that nature. So I'd say that we've enjoyed a good relationship with Mr. Giusti over the last 20-plus years, and I think that that's benefited both him and the city with the housing construction that we've seen in that area. And certainly one of the more popular subdivisions as far as new residents moving in, and one of the only neighborhoods we have that is allowing for new residents to move in, as we have a significant demand for single-family housing, and aren't building as much to keep up with the demand as you all know. We have a housing shortage, but I will open it up to any questions.
Are there any questions for the city manager at this point? Yes, great.
I just have one question. In our comprehensive plan, we have a policy that states we would desire to have 60 to 70% of our housing units as single-family homes. So when we add these 144 units, are we still within our desired range?
I do not know the answer to that off the
Okay.
top of my head.
Okay, I would just be curious, just to keep an eye on ensuring that we're trying to, if that is the desired objective, that we are working to be within, in that range or close to that range. So I'd be interested in that.
Sure, I can certainly find that number for you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that.
Your mic's not on.
There you go.
Thank you. It's on now. All right, I just wanted to comment that I think the Brookstone project might have been one of the first meetings I was on city council when it got approved. And since that point, working with this group has been a pleasure. I know that we had some safety concerns during the Brookstone project, and they were immediately addressed by the group. And it just seems like they've been very proactive and supportive of the community. So I just wanted to speak on that fact. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it would be appropriate at this time to ask Mr. Giusti to come to the podium since you took the time to be here this evening, and I'll recognize you. And we also do have several public works staff here. Our city engineer is available online, and our Parks Department director, so if people have questions for staff. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I have a question for you, Paul. What is your timeline for construction, assuming this development agreement is approved tonight?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be back in a non-COVID environment where we're actually here in person. Last time, it was all via Teams and so on, so it's great to be with you. And we still have a lot of work to do, but I would say that if things fall in place with the state permit and getting the bids from the contractors back, late summer, maybe early fall would be the time we would love to see this project coming out of the ground. So sometime in that time frame would be sort of looking ahead on what we've got to accomplish yet should be about right, I think.
Fantastic. And then I understand that the project will be phased, and so you won't be building all the buildings all at the same time. Do you have a optimistic prediction for, how long it will take you to complete all the buildings?
Well, I think overall, from start to finish, that's going to be at least a 3-year sort of project. I mean, it's this, Summer Ridge was 56 units. It took us about a year to complete construction of that from the time we started, and then about another 5-6 months till it was completely leased, and we did that along the way. So when you look at this project, which is larger, that's, I think, a fair assessment. Again, a lot of questions about the economy, interest rates, and so on. And so that's why we'll be, building as we lease the buildings up. But broadly, we see this in 2 phases, kind of working from west to east, if you would, along American Way.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Giusti? Michelle?
Thanks for being here, Paul. As you remember, with Summer Ridge, we had, or maybe you didn't know, there was a lot of uproar about the amount of traffic that was going to increase over by Brookstone. And as a resident of Brookstone, I can assure you that there has not been a problem with that. But that's only 56 units. With 144 units, and I know that American Parkway is a much larger road, so there's more possibilities there. But I also know that there's only a couple of ways that people can get in and get out. I'm only just concerned because of the feedback that potentially could come our way with regard to traffic flow, what your comments are about that.
Well, I think in the case of Summer Ridge, that was particularly evident during construction. There was a lot of activity, and we were anxious to kind of keep it moving. So I think once we were finished with construction, it's been fairly muted, at least as far as I know. When I look at where we're doing at Park Reserve, I mean, American Way, and again, we've built that years ago in conjunction with the city. That's a big road. That's ultimately going to connect to Harvey Road for anybody heading east. For somebody that's heading into town, you would conceivably make a left and go American Way. So I think that there's other outlets, if you would, and that's kind of when we were looking at it. It seemed like that would take the majority of the traffic. There'll be some up Brookstone Drive, but, and I certainly during construction, it should not be a problem at all because, again, Summer Ridge is right there at the entrance of Brookstone Meadows. So I think we should be okay, and that's the studies we've done, or what we've looked at, I should say, broadly indicates we'll be fine.
The only thing I would point out, though, is, I don't know if you know this, there's a lot of activity at Wallace Park in the baseball fields.
Yes.
And a lot of people park on American Parkway. So just to give you a heads up, there may be some congestion that way when you do the production.
Well, we'll certainly, I know we worked with Drake and with the police department and everything to organize the traffic and address any issues that came to us. We were very quick to do that. And I'm thrilled to hear there's a lot of baseball activity at Wallace Park. I mean, that was always the idea way back when we were talking to Vern Johnson about it, which was, I do mention to the council that it was in 1994 when we first started working in Lake Mills at Brookstone. So 31 years ago now, which is a little hard for me to believe, by the way, but it's been a long, very productive time. And in fact, I remember talking to Vern at one point where that was contemplated possibly as a school site, and there was some discussion about that. This is a long time ago now, but ultimately decided to have it be the beautiful park that it is. We're very excited about building right there because our designs are really to incorporate Wallace Park. The views are that way and really make it a very walking community, if you would, that'll take advantage of that beautiful facility.
That sounds good.
Thank you. Greg?
When I referenced the Brookstone project, I wasn't referencing 1994. I was referencing. I didn't want to date myself.
Well, I dated myself, so.
All right.
Was that a hand up, Steve? No, okay. So I guess I have a follow-up for Drake or maybe Brandon. You noted, I think earlier, Drake, that there's no TIF requests. So will this project contribute then to, putting some money into that TID that then we can use in the future? And what type of projects would you anticipate we could use it for?
The full tax payment will be contributed to the TID. And so, when we're talking about value here, it's going to be at time of full completion and full occupancy, a full certificate of occupancy granted. It'll be a significant taxpayer within the community. And so with the TID, as you know, the base value, which is the empty land right now, will continue to be divvied up, the revenue generated from that among all of the taxing entities. All of the improvement will go towards the TID. And so anything that's listed within that project plan would be eligible for use of those TIF funds. The most significant of which is the extension of South CP Avenue. And so there are other projects listed in there, but anything that is in the project plan, and that project plan can be amended. There's a process for that through the Joint Review Board to add projects if they become necessary. And so there's a number of projects we'd be able to work on, but I think the number one priority of the TID is the extension of that roadway. In order to provide another outlet for truck traffic, in order to not need to go through the community in order to get to the industrial park, and just a connection to State Highway 89. The other thing I would mention that I didn't mention beforehand is that there are no requests for relaxations or deviations or variances from the code. The proposal has and will completely comply with the Lake Mills zoning code. And so with that, this project is permitted by right. So it doesn't require a conditional use permit or anything like that. So permitted by right means, as it sounds, they have a right to build the project. And so, but for your original question, we could, if you revisit the project plan, anything that's listed under there, and Brandon might remember some of the more specifics of improvements that are listed in there, but the most significant of which is CP Avenue.
And this is TID number 9, correct? That we
Correct.
just kind of created
Overlaid.
last year and incorporated part of TID 6. Brandon, anything that you would want to add?
I think Drake did a great job. Definitely the biggest expense in that project plan was CP Avenue. And then just a reminder that that would be an L with unsaven lane, and bringing that whole area out to State Highway 89. Also from like a public safety standpoint, that would be that kind of second north-south route through the city. So that's definitely the largest project in that project plan. But there was a few others. There were some pathways and some other utility connections and things that the city council could look at if you'd like.
Great, thank you.
And then just regarding traffic, I think, when we look at this development, the logical path of motorists is not going to be through the residential area. You've got many more outlets than Summer Ridge Apartments had, Industrial Drive, Enterprise, CP, in order to get to likely where motorists are going to go who are trying to get to Highway 89 or I-94. And then we also, when Brookstone Phase 9 is completed, the final phase of the single-family home subdivision, American Way will connect to Harvey Road, and then we have that grant with the town of Aztalan to upgrade our portion of Harvey Road in order to accommodate more traffic. And so if someone were to be needing to go that way, then that would take them through a portion of the single-family home subdivision, but only on kind of the arterial or collector roadway that is there. And so I would say there will be very limited traffic on Brookstone Drive, and that they have more logical routes in order to get to the destinations that they are ultimately trying to get through when they're leaving or arriving at the Park Reserve development.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments regarding this resolution 25-89? Excuse me, 25-18. Okay, seeing none, Sam, would you please call the roll on resolution 25-18, which is the developer agreement for the Park Reserve Apartments?
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Gosh, I can't talk tonight. Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Best wishes for your project.
Well, thank you, and if I could just take a moment to express my thanks to not only to the council for your faith and confidence in us and your approval, but also want to say thanks to Dan, to Drake, Dwayne, the folks at Strand, particularly Brandon, as well as Dustin Wolf and Mead Hunt. I mean, I feel like we've been working on this for a while now, a lot of back and forth, as Drake indicated, but I think it's been a very good relationship, and I think the project has benefited from sort of all the input and making all the changes. So we're very excited about building a beautiful new community here in Lake Mills, as we have for, I hate to say it, 3 decades, but we're after it. So thank you so much.
Thank you again, Mr. Giusti. Okay, our next item is Resolution 25-19. Sam, would you read that title for us, please?
If I can spit it out, yes. City Council Resolution 25-19, directing the Parks Board to review, discuss, and recommend recreational amenities, improvements, and properties at Sandy Beach Park. Or, sorry, priorities at Sandy Beach Park.
I'll move to approve City Council Resolution 25-19, directing the Parks Board to review, discuss, and recommend recreational amenity improvements and priorities at Sandy Beach Park.
Second. Double second?
I think Greg got it
Yeah,
in
he
first.
did.
So a
He
motion
did.
by Ms. Quidnow, seconded by Mr. Waters. I'll turn it over to staff. Do you want to have
Sure.
Director Schreiner?
This is at the request of the city council. It's written generically, but I think with enough direction in order to specify for the Parks Board that what the council is looking for is feedback on recreational amenities specifically. There is I think just about a 6-month time period in there. That was just to put a date on paper for you. You're not obligated to put a deadline on it, then you can change as you'd like. So this is written generically. It certainly can be amended by the city council as you would like. Director Schreiner is here. If you have any questions of him or of any other staff that's available tonight. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to the city council for discussion.
I'd like to recognize Director Schreiner and Eric, have you come up and just tell us your thoughts for how you would, present this to the Parks Board, and then the council can give you, feedback, or, as Drake said, make any amendments we might wish.
Any specific questions at all, or?
Does anyone have any questions to start with?
So I'll start then. What I would like to do, at least with Parks Board, is define our current recreational amenities at the park, see what either wants to be retained, removed, improved, or added on. I think starting with our current recreational amenities is hopefully going to give them a list to pick off of and a list to focus on. Hopefully focus their efforts into that 6-month time frame if possible. So we at least have some deadline or end in sight at least for it, and we can keep them focused. And then also I'd like to take into account some of the resident input that we've received regarding Sandy Beach, and we are going to have the existing 2018 conceptual plan updated to what has currently been discussed at Sandy Beach. We're going to use that as our basis to go off of. That will be a working document as Parks Board continues to discuss these recreational amenities, and we'll adjust as needed. But I think starting with that first template of our existing ones is going to help a lot.
Sounds great. Any comments or questions for Director Schreiner?
I have one.
Yeah, Mary.
So I am curious to know if you do think there's any possibility, feasibility, and I don't know if this is a question for you, Eric, or it's really a question for the city council. If there's any opportunity to have something put in this summer, before the summer, in the summer, fall, like if 2025 is even a year we can, I know I keep calling them low-hanging fruit, but have the possibility of an improvement of something.
Some small, easier ones that would be done is if, like, I know we discussed potential precast or pre-constructed picnic shelters would be a very easy thing to implement. But what I want to make sure is what's implemented does fall into plan for the overall, I suppose, overview of the park. I would hate to have something that's installed, which in turn makes it difficult for the rest of the park to be designed around it. But I think there are still some existing things that can be assessed that could be done this year. Potentially looking at what our long-term goal or plan is for potentially extending the beach or combining both beaches at Sandy Beach Park would be maybe the removal of the existing boat ramp would be a small thing that could be done at least to advance a project. Just as an example.
I know there just was some feedback about the temporary volleyball as an example not being ideal, and so I don't
That
know,
would be one of
getting one
the-
or two on the beach just for, even if they were
So that would be one of
temporary.
the-
I was just trying to think of,
Existing recreational things that we can at least assess that would be an easier one in relation to the other projects in the park that could be pursued. But it would be included at least on the list of things for Parks Board to look at and provide a recommendation.
I'm anxious to see change is all. So I'm pushing. When I saw October date, I have to be honest, I went 6 months. I feel like I have a sense of urgency. I know, Greg, I recall a comment you made quite a bit ago, and I know it was specific to the restaurant, but it is just getting momentum. I think perfection is our enemy because it'll never be perfect. And so I'm just trying to, I guess maybe I'm maybe a little rose-colored glasses on some of it, but trying to get some movement forward on improvements that are citizen-centric.
If the council knows that there's something it wants to do, we can move on it. We have to start that. We have to start that process, and then we have to accept that we may have to live with that decision before the entire vision of Sandy Beach comes together. So if the city council wants to move the volleyball courts, and we know that that's a priority for the city council, we can bring you a plan to do that and potentially be able to do it quickly in this year. It will take some amendments to the, the capital budget that you've approved and reallocation of resources based on things that were planned that aren't happening anymore, and things that, now that you want to do. So if there are certainties that this council knows, you simply have to tell us and make that, adopt that plan or provide that direction, and we can bring it to fruition, but it will be kind of outside the overall vision. And so we'll then be designing around that feature rather than incorporating it in.
Lisa?
Yeah, sure.
I really believe, I understand completely where your angst in trying to get this done. As someone who we've been sitting on this council and gone through this process and, seeing the delays and all the things, it is an agonizing situation. That being said, I'm in agreement with Eric that we really should just hold and make sure that what we've directed them to do as far as identify what recreational pieces we want there to be, with that, so we don't have to do this over again, or that we don't have to, take something back and lose money in the process. So I think it's smart to be mindful about what exactly is going where and why, and using the Parks Board's recommendations to our benefit.
Great.
Mr. Schreiner, right now it's stated to be about a 6-month review process. If we shorten that up to a 4-month process, that might allow us to get some things done towards the end of the season here this year. What kind of restraints do you think that might put on the committee to only have 4 months instead of the 6 months to review this?
There would just have to be more decisive actions made at the Parks Board level, I think. I think it can be done within a 4-month time frame if that's what you'd like. I think that's an achievable goal.
Okay.
So this would be planned to be discussed, if adopted at council this evening, to be discussed at the April 14th meeting for Parks Board, so within this month at least.
So regardless of what end time we put on it, you're saying you would plan to
If
bring it
action is
forward?
taken tonight, yes.
Yeah, okay, great. I've got a couple follow-up questions, and I'm wondering if these should be included in the resolution, by amendment, or if it's clear enough for us giving some verbal direction tonight would be clear. A couple things that we talked about during our work session were that we weren't going to make any changes in the short term to food service, and that we weren't going to be, and that we were going to be moving ahead with infrastructure as a priority, which would include work in the manufactured home community area. So I guess I would like to make sure that the Parks Board is clear that we're not asking them to look at either of those two things. So I'm just wondering, do people feel that this resolution is clear, or just, if there's consensus on that, is our just verbal discussion tonight enough for Eric, or do people feel like we need to have an amendment to say like what's not in the scope? And I think it would also help with, if we do shorten the time period, want to make sure that we have a very precise scope that's achievable for them.
I think the wording of recreational improvements is clear for me, as this is just for the
Park area?
park area, doesn't include food service or other amenities. Just recreational improvements seems to me to be clear enough. The only caveat to that would be the third whereas, where it's tasked with the duty to make recommendations to the city council for improvements of public parks, but that's just what they're supposed to do. So I think it's clear as it is.
Okay.
I think, I guess I was speaking to Attorney Drescher, is based on their powers and duties under ordinance, if the Parks Board so chose to discuss food service options, I'm not sure that the council can limit their ability to do so without amending the ordinance. I don't know that infrastructure improvements, utility improvements would be within their scope under the ordinance, and so they would be prevented from kind of commenting on that piece of it. But I think if they so chose as a board to talk about food service, they could do so without direction. And as the ordinance is written, we are not confident that the city council could limit their ability to explore those options if they so chose.
Okay, and then I guess one other question, then we can certainly discuss further, but in the category of what I think would be included in recreational amenities, I think things like renting out boat slips or renting out parking areas for boat trailers, to me, that fits in recreational activities. And I think those are things that we charge a fee for, and, people are on a list that, get to do that. So I wondered if, do my fellow council members agree that those would be topics we would like the Parks Board to include in their discussion and their recommendations for recreational improvements or amenities?
If they want to comment on that, I'm fine with that.
Anybody else?
Yeah. I would not have had that necessarily in scope, so I think that's a great point of clarification, Lisa. And I think it aligns with the recreation as far as boating. I know the kayak rental is another example, so I think
Sure.
that would fit in. I think the storage kind of more is on the parking side, but I don't know. I think it could be in scope. And I think, Eric, I think that would be, would you have that in scope? Boat
Boat slips, I would, because it's an interior park fixture. Regarding the fence parking, I'm not quite sure, but I suppose if it's boating within the park or the park is being used for that recreation, it could be.
And I think I personally would want to include, parking spaces that are being rented out for trailers or boat lift storage or whatever in their scope, because it is going to impact. We're not asking them to make a decision on how much parking we should provide, but if we currently, I have no idea the numbers, if we currently rent out 50 parking spaces for different types of uses like that, and there's a recommendation to increase that or to lower that, that would affect, other decisions that we might make about parking. So I would be interested in their recommendation on whether we should change any of those. Great.
I'd like to make a motion to amend. Last line, be it further resolved, a report of the board's findings are due to City Council by August 7th, or whatever that first meeting is in August, 2025. Someone help me?
Trying to.
The first Tuesday in August is the 5th.
August 5th, 2025.
And would we want so they could provide a report on that date? We
Correct.
wouldn't need it, we wouldn't be asking for it in advance of the meeting. They would provide it on that date.
Oh,
by
we
that
would
date.
want it to be part of the meeting's minutes. It would be on the agenda with a report included.
So then would we want it by the prior Friday, I guess is what I'm thinking, which would be August 1st.
I think August 5th is fine. I think we can communicate to them that the packet goes out, the week prior. You can certainly specify that you'd like a written report in conjunction, instead of just an oral report, but I don't think that's necessary. So I think we can communicate to them that your deadline is to provide your recommendation at the August 5th city council meeting. Functionally, we would need to have it by the ideally the Wednesday prior to include in the packet, no later than Thursday at noon typically. But I think that can be communicated to them from Eric when he is outlining the process for responding to the council's referral.
So that would be so moved on the date of August 5th.
August 5th, okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. I'm concerned that it's a little too short. And part of the reason I think that is because I would like for the public to be aware of this and to have the opportunity to attend Parks Board meetings and give their comments. And I would expect, even though Eric is saying you'll get them started, in the April meeting, they won't have any kind of even draft recommendations for the public to comment on yet at that point. And so I'm just wondering, I appreciate the interest in trying to keep it moving, but I wonder if we could split this a little bit and maybe go with more of like a September 1, bringing it to the council at the first meeting in September as opposed to August. So those would be my thoughts on the August 5th.
Yeah, I guess my thought was maybe it would take a special meeting or two to meet the 4-month deadline, but at the same time, looking at the community and wanting to provide a quick solution here and get some things moving forward as soon as possible. So that's why I went with the 4-month date.
Any other comments one way or the other? Mr. Schreiner, do you have thoughts on what else might be on the Parks Board's agenda in the next few months that could impact, their ability to be successful on a 4-month timeline?
We are beginning review of the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which ends in 2025. So it's going to be throughout the remainder of this year reviewing that plan, as well as reassessing our parks fees and looking to see if we could have that completed prior to budget drafting process for 2026 budget creation. So those are two fairly large topics on Parks Board plate right now.
Okay, thank you for that. And then also, I guess, would the timeline, whether it's August or September or October, how would any of those fit into your ability to make recommendations for the capital improvement plan for, starting for 2026?
I suppose it's kind of a difficult one to answer, figuring out those priorities. I know there can be a range, or a range can be requested, at least within capital improvement plans, looking at the higher side of some quotes that have been given, understanding the general cost of some of those features existing. It may not be exactly accurate to what would be there after further review, but I don't think it would impact much onto the capital improvement process. Generally, a playground costs so much, generally volleyball courts cost so much, so I think it would be fairly easy to calculate it, just it may not be exact amounts.
And I guess one other thing I'm thinking about in terms of just the timing of everything, to the extent that there could be a recommendation to change leasing out of boat slips or leasing out of parking spots. I'm assuming that has sort of a particular timeline and cycle in the year. And
That's annually, at the first of each year, is when those leases begin. Yeah.
So any of these timelines, August, September, October, would give you sufficient time to change those
I believe so, yeah.
for the following year if that was the recommendation? Okay. Any other discussion on the motion to amend the resolution to make an August 5th deadline? Okay, if not, can we have a roll call vote on the motion to amend?
Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Ms. Schmager,
Aye.
Ms. Quidno.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, so we've got a 4-month timeline, so that will hopefully help you'll have to, Mary and Eric, help the Parks Board not to get too much into the weeds, no pun intended, and to be able to, certainly want them to be successful. So I guess we haven't voted on the overall resolution yet as amended. Does anyone else have any thoughts about whether we need to amend the scope of the resolution based on our discussion so far? Or do we feel that it's clear on what's included and what's not included?
I'll call on the question, which means call for a vote.
So that means we need to vote on the motion to call the question?
Calling the question is a motion.
Yeah.
It requires a second, and it's a motion to end debate. So you certainly can go that route, or you can organically decide that debate has ended, but otherwise, a motion to call the question requires a second, and I believe is not debatable.
Okay, we have a motion to call the question and end debate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Mr. Fields, so then we need to vote on that.
I believe you proceed straight to a roll call. I don't believe it's
So
debatable.
now we proceed straight to a roll call on the original resolution. Okay,
No.
as amended.
A motion to call the question.
that process.
That's what, okay, that's what I was confused about. Okay, so now we have a roll call vote on the motion to end, to call the question and end debate on Resolution 25-18. Excuse me, 19. Sam, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, so now we need a roll call vote on Resolution 25-19 as amended.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Schreiner, and look forward to the Parks Board's work on this project. Okay, our last item under council business tonight is a discussion on the proposed amendment to the Lake Mills City Code 594, which is our tree ordinance. And we received a red-line version from our city manager reflecting the changes that were made by the ad hoc committee. So if you look back in our records, we did receive a report from Jeanette Heitman, the chair of that committee, back in January, and she summarized the three items that the council had asked them to work on. And this is that second one, which is proposed recommendations to ordinance 594. So tonight, we've just scheduled this as the discussion, so we're just seeing the document, and then we can decide if someone is interested in sponsoring it at a future meeting, or discussing with staff, or however we would like to move forward. So does anybody want to kick off the discussion? I can tell Greg
I have
does.
a question for staff. As I read this, it looks like we're adding heritage trees to basically the document, and then updating the master street plan, basically.
Yeah, there's a reorganization of the overall ordinance. I think throughout the document, there have been updates, there have been added references to preservation as well throughout the document. There has been a title change to reflect perhaps an expanded view of what constitutes the urban forest. So the most major inclusion is certainly the heritage tree section, but there are slight adjustments, I think, throughout much of the document. There is one, perhaps, it goes from 7-day to 14-day notice for the removal of a public tree to the adjacent property owner. So that certainly would be an operational change mandated through ordinance. So I think you highlighted kind of the major ones, but there are others throughout that will impact the operations of Director Schreiner's department.
Can I get some clarity on section 594-5, which is the master street tree plan? I'm looking at item D. When the genus reaches or exceeds 20% or 30% with regard to oak trees, a population or the species reaches or exceeds 10% of population or 15% for oak trees. So it kind of lists oak trees twice there, and I'm kind of confused on what that meaning is. Can I get some clarity on that?
You're in 594-5, Section D.
Correct.
Right, and the reference to oak trees is an addition to current ordinance.
Yep, so, yeah, so.
So I guess it's, I get
The difference is
confused.
genus versus species.
Okay.
Eric can give you more insight on that, but it's two different categories, one broader than the other. And so you see the different percentage allocation based on that.
Great. Can I get some clarity?
That's exactly the case. When we refer to genus, that would be specifically oak trees. When we're talking about species, or vice versa, it would be bur oaks, white oaks, swamp oaks, red oaks, et cetera. So what we're trying to do is we can still have a broad selection of oaks, but we're trying to eliminate certain cultivars or species of them, just in case there are certain blights, diseases, insects that may infest a certain type of species, very similar to, let's say red oaks with oak wilt, et cetera. So hopefully that provides some clarification for you.
So you would have 30%, you could have 30% of the urban forest is oak trees, but you would not want more than 15% of the urban forest to be bur oak trees.
Correct.
Or white, or pin, or red?
Correct.
So a species would be a subset within that genus.
Okay, great. That helps a lot. And then one other one. As I was reading through the heritage tree process, and there's the private segment, and I just wanted to, I guess, get clarity. I see that the city forester shall direct any trimming or other maintenance of the designated trees. That's in that section. But I was wondering, when they designate themselves to be, a private citizen designates to have a heritage tree, and somewhere else in the document, I can't pull it up right now for some reason, but it seems like they needed to get approvals to do trim work, but that's not upon the responsibility of the city to do that trimming, right?
And I wouldn't interpret that way either. I wouldn't have city forestry staff complete trimming on private trees.
I'm sorry, what was that statement?
I don't think I would have city staff complete trimming on private trees, let's say in someone's backyard or something like that, but there would be general oversight to make sure that it's done properly, ANSI standards, ISA standards, et cetera, to make sure there's proper pruning cuts, relief cuts.
But it's not the city's responsibility to do that trimming, right?
Correct. The actual work performed.
Okay.
I was also interested in that section because I didn't scroll to it just now, but it did read like the city could direct somebody for the kind of work that they would do on their private tree, and I wondered if that was.
That's how I would interpret it as well.
Yeah, I wondered if that was, if we really want to go that far with our policy. I mean, it seems like the Heritage Tree Program is really just to recognize the value of, significant, important trees in our community, whether they're large or old or tied to some historic event or whatever, but not to then tell property owners how they have to manage it. So that might be something we would want to look at a little bit. I don't know if you had a recollection of what the ad hoc committee was thinking there.
I don't specifically regarding the private trees. I will say the section specifically for heritage trees was taken from local other municipalities or neighboring municipalities. So we use their existing format to really draft what we have for proposed in this ordinance.
I do not believe the committee intended for the city to have maintenance responsibilities over a private tree that has been placed on the heritage tree list. I think we certainly could add specifying language and further flesh out the responsibilities, duties and responsibilities. I'm less confident in saying that the committee did not have an intention of maintenance specifications for trees that have been placed on the heritage tree list as far as responsibilities of the private property owner to maintain. But the ordinance would lend itself to perhaps not, because the property owner reserves the right, believe, within this ordinance, to remove it from the heritage tree list or remove the tree. And then they have to notify that.
Yeah, it had to go to, it has to go somewhere. Go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, you had,
I had a follow-up on that, because that was one of my questions. To get a heritage tree on the list, it says anybody can nominate a tree from anywhere, public or private,
Apply, correct.
right? And all I gotta do is take it to the Parks Board, and the 5 members say, yes, it's on the program. So why then do I have to have a public hearing to take it off the program? Shouldn't it have the exact same steps to take it off the list? And who's paying for a public hearing at that point? If, if Mary's my next door neighbor and she wants to put up a garage, and I know she's got a nice tree in her backyard, I could go talk to my friends at Public Work, or Public Parks, have her tree, one of her trees put on a list, and it's gonna take her 6 months to a year to get it off of there.
So some of the things that we haven't discussed yet at this point is the specifics for implementing such a program. This is in its infancy, like I said, copied from another municipality. So perhaps there's further clarification that we need to have within it,
Yeah.
drafting it.
It's written very well that trees are very easy to go on there. There's an expense that we're gonna absorb out of it, but it makes it very difficult to change anything or do anything once it's on that list. And it's gonna be very difficult to get off of there, because you have a public hearing. The people who are really adamant about this policy are gonna show up and protest, and it's gonna be, I can play some games with my neighbors. I could see where this policy, the way it's written, is gonna set you up that way.
Certainly could be the case.
So while we're talking about the private, I don't support the private tree portion at all of the Heritage Tree Program. And actually, I am feeling a little just uneasy with the amount of work we have already outstanding on trees. And I don't know where Chris is getting his data, Mr. Lopak, who spoke during public comment regarding 91% of undocumented trees. I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if it's high or low, but the fact that we have a lot of responsibilities currently with trees, and I'm not sure I'm understanding the value for the amount of time and effort, and in particular, just in general. And then the private portion, I agree with Steve, I am concerned that it is really a wonderful creative idea to celebrate mature trees. But I feel that putting it in an ordinance we're putting it in our code program is just not, I'm feeling in our best interest today, the way it's written. But I would like to learn more about if this adds one more level of excellence, if you will. It's identifying and carrying at an even higher level this set of trees versus all of the 4,645 trees, at least that were mentioned earlier. So I am concerned about that. We have grand ideas and really great vision, but we're a small team in the city, and I am worried about the value that we're going to get for the amount of work. Just a concern.
Steve, that's all.
Eric, you do a great job for the city. I appreciate it. I'm worried that this is going to take too much of your time away from other duties that you could be doing. We win a lot of awards as far as with our Arbor Day and Tree USA. I mean, you've won a lot of awards. We're recognized in this city for our arborists and what we do. I think we should be taking our money and our time and focusing on making what we do have better. This is going to create another whole department and a lot of overhead that we're not going to be out there. We're going to spend more time in the office documenting and trying to make labels for trees and running around and inspecting them than actually doing what we normally would do.
Yep. So I do want to clarify too, this was based on the recommendations from the ad hoc tree committee and like I said, copying from another municipality that has the same policy. So we were trying to reflect what was requested of the committee while drafting this.
And I would like to follow up on that. I too have some concerns about all the language regarding private properties, whether it's the heritage tree plan or other aspects of it. There's a certain appeal of the heritage tree program to me in terms of putting more emphasis on how we value trees in our community, but I think you're absolutely right, Steve. There's a lot of overhead that could be in here. I would love to see some kind of partnership with Historic Society, with the schools, where there's, different interests that would like to recognize some of our most premier heritage trees in the community, but it does seem like that could be done without an ordinance, that could be done in sort of more of an optional way or encouraged through the regular partnerships that you have that, were discussed in Drake's report, like with the schools and with the Historic Society and things like that, without necessarily being an ordinance requirement that then could get misused and certainly could create some overhead. I had a question back to the master street tree plan. And just so we all understand, that's a plan that is occasionally updated in the city. Would that be correct? Like we have a plan and it's updated every so often? How does that work?
We're not
exactly?
required to update that plan, but we do have one existing that was authored in approximately 1997 to apply for Arbor Day Foundation requirements or to continue our Tree City USA status and apply for urban forestry grants. We do need to have an urban forestry management plan on record. It is planned to at least update our current urban forestry management plan through a capital request in which firms, consultants, et cetera, basically do a diagnostics report of our entire urban forest, look what our priorities are in maintaining and sustaining the urban forest. So it'll be at least an 18-month process through a capital reporting process.
And so that kind of following
Capital
along,
improvement.
again, with what Steve was talking about, where could we best put our resources? Maybe it would be a good place to put our resources to update that plan,
Sure.
put that in our capital improvement plan for 2016. And, this committee, I think, has provided a lot of good value and good discussions in highlighting things in areas that we can always be improving on. And it seems like updating that plan would be a really good one to do. And even if it's not required to do every 5 years, but, 30 years sounds like that's, maybe would be good to refresh that. And I'm sure there's new techniques and understanding about urban trees that could be incorporated into that.
Consistently evolving field.
Yeah, yeah. One other kind of more fine point in the proposal is that the master street tree plan, it's 594-5A, said it would be developed and updated through a collaborative effort between the city forester and the Parks Board. And I guess I've been thinking about that a little bit because I think there could be a role for the master street tree plan to go through a board, for their review and approval. We're lucky enough to have a member of our Parks Board currently who is a forester, but that doesn't always happen. And so I'm wondering if collaborative is maybe not quite the right approach, but whether there could be something added either here or even in the Parks Board authorizing language for what the board's duties are that, just review and recommendation on the master street tree plan, which just could be a part of their duties, just to have one more place to look at it. So I don't know if you have a thought on that, Eric.
Well, in looking at, or at least getting some quotes and feedback from forestry consultants, that's a very common process that they go through, is the approval processes through boards, commissions, councils. So it would be expected that it would probably go through either the Parks Board or at least the City Council.
Okay. Any other discussion that people have on this draft that we've got? Greg?
I'm in agreement with everybody on the private side of things. I think that we asked for the public trees to be evaluated in this process and to clean this document up. And I want to study a little bit more on the heritage trees before I could make a recommendation to council. But take an attempt to clean the document up and maybe bring it back at another time with possible sponsorship. So I'm willing to take a look at that.
So I have also had an interest since attending a few of the ad hoc committee meetings and just, hearing their discussion and some of the things that they would like to move forward. So I wondered if it would make some sense for Greg, for you and I to follow up with staff, talk through this, develop some, direction or suggestions for sponsorship, or would it be best for one rather than both? I don't have a strong leaning, but I think maybe some follow-up by a council member who's interested in sponsoring changes might be a good next step.
Well, of course, within rules, we can have two council members sponsor an amendment or a proposal. So I'm more than I'm more than happy to be one of those two, and if you'd like to do that, I think that'd be great, so.
Drake, any thoughts or?
I think that's appropriate. The only, if you run into disagreement, you could have, dueling sponsorships of ordinances for the council to consider, which, is not necessarily a bad thing, but you'll each have to decide what's a priority for you, what's important. If there's,
We could always have option A, option B.
yeah, that's true. I think that you always have to be careful to make sure that you don't extend the conversation into a quorum, of course. But from our perspective, after tonight, we'll wait until a sponsor requests something. We can certainly help with drafting from a council member and additions, deletions, further amendments. Putting it in the form that you'd like, but until we have a sponsor at this point, it won't appear on an agenda until someone is ready.
Well, if there's no objection from other council members, I guess I would propose that Greg and I could schedule a meeting with Eric just to talk through the proposal, any recommendations that he may have, and then we could at least just have an initial meeting, and then we could sort of decide at that point if one of us wants to take the lead and sponsor or the other, and
Now, one of us may drop off.
Yeah. But I think we both have enough interest, it might be nice to sit down with Eric and bring in both of our questions and kind of see where it goes from there. Does that sound okay? Are other people comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, super, then I don't have a sense that there's a great time sensitivity to this, other than I want to honor the work of the committee and, help them to know that we're following up on their recommendations. Any other comments or discussion that then Greg and I can take into our follow-up meeting on this draft ordinance? Mary, yeah.
I would just like, if there's support for the Heritage Tree Program, I think the definition is quite lengthy and broad and in some cases very subjective. And so just making sure that gets shored up a little bit.
I appreciate you making that comment because I think, one of the challenges I so appreciated the members of this committee because they all had great passion in different ways for their care and concern about trees. But it's hard to write in that kind of language in an ordinance. An ordinance has a certain way that it has to read, and it doesn't always reflect the passion that maybe people might want it to. So maybe some of that language does need to be, adjusted a little bit. Okay, I guess we have kind of a game plan on the proposed changes for 594. So Greg and I will follow up with Director Schreiner. So that concludes our agenda of council business for this evening. So are there any recommendations for future agendas?
You'll have your organizational on the 15th, and so that often takes up a significant chunk of the, at least the beginning of the meeting.
Right, so our next meeting will be the organizational meeting. We'll have election of officers. Mr. Fields is stepping down, which we'll talk about more in a moment, and we'll have a new council member joining us. We do have, that timing matches with doing a closed session for midway point in the year for meeting with our city manager. So we can do our mid-year check-in with Drake. I've been working with staff on some proposed ordinance changes on our meeting procedures, just reflecting back on the last couple of years, chairing the meetings and thinking about ways we could improve things. So I think that would lend itself well to bring that forward at an organizational meeting. So I'll probably introduce those at our next meeting as well. Any other ideas? So before we close, I do want to recognize Steve Fields and your many years of service to the City Council. I want to thank you for your time. And I'll give each council member an opportunity to speak. I met you at the first council meeting. We were sitting together over on that end, and you gave me lots of great advice about what to take seriously and what not to take so seriously. So I'm not sure if I followed all of it over the years, but I did very much appreciate your guidance and kind of, giving me some tips as an experienced council member. I have really valued your knowledge and experience in both the construction industry. I think that's contributed a lot to our discussions, as well as your work as an EMS and how that has helped us figure out our EMS services. So again, I just want to thank you for your many years of service to the city and for assisting me as a new council member. Would anyone else like to share some thoughts? Great.
Thank you, Mr. Fields, for your service to the city. You're one of the few people in city council that's been able to represent the whole city without being the at-large member, because you moved at one point and had to resign, and then you got back on the other side of the city. So congratulations. That must reflect well upon your abilities here in city council. You brought us a lot of great wisdom, history of things that had happened in the past. As the new council came on, you were the one that had the most seniority and could speak to a lot of things. Also, your abilities with your job, being in the construction industry and being able to bring some numbers and facts, and that was always helpful. So thanks for your service, and thanks for all the insight that you brought to City Council.
Thank you.
So I had to write stuff down because I wanted to really be thoughtful about what I wanted to say. First of all, you are the reason I'm on city council. It was when you left in December of the year you moved, I was able to sneak in. Greg and I were fighting for it, it's tooth and nail. But you're the reason I'm on council. Thanks in part to Mike Foster for a nomination, but still, you're the reason. And it is that with that, I thank you for that opportunity, for that ability to learn so much from this experience, from you and from everyone that we've worked with, city staff, going through the whole process of finding a new city manager and working through all of those nuances. I will echo the EMT and the construction information is super, super helpful. I know it wasn't always easy during the EMT discussions because, I'm a passionate person too, and you're very passionate as well. And that knowledge was, I know how it is, but I appreciated that because it gave insight into all of the things that you truly care about, which was number one, people. I want to thank you for your humor, which definitely has helped me in many ways. You always found time, no matter what state, physical state you were in, or how many hours you had to get on your bike and ride back to wherever you were going. It just astounded me every single time when you're like, oh, I got to drive 4 more hours. Oh my gosh, really? After we've been sitting in city council for 3 hours. Okay, have fun. But you did it, and you did it without complaint. You did it with, with the love of this work. And that's the kind of thing I want to continue and hopefully honor with you how that has had an impact on me. So I hope that you enjoy your free time. Kind of jealous, and that you will appreciate all of that extra time you get to have with your family.
Thank you.
Well, I am going to just say ditto to the thank yous, but I will add one additional thing to Michelle's list of things to do for you as you depart from city council is to not be bashful, to come to public comment and give us your 3 minutes. Or to send us your important feedback or give us a call and still be, feeling like your voice can be heard because we're here and we super appreciate you. And thank you. Thanks for all of your help and meeting me for coffee to give me the gist of city council and public government. And so I super appreciate it and appreciate you. And good luck.
Thank you. No, I'd like to say thank you to everybody here, too. This has been an amazing council to work with. Everybody comes with a lot of different background and knowledge, which has made us be successful and keep things moving forward. We've been able to support staff, bring Drake on board, and things are headed in the right direction, and it's very obvious to people in the community. So thank you all for being there, and keep up the good work, Drake.
I will just give the opportunity if staff want to share any comments as well. Some of you worked with Steve even longer than those of us on the council have.
I would just, I guess, pass along my thanks to Steve. I think, when I first started, there was only one time in a council meeting that one of my recommendations, Steve didn't like too much, and he tabled it. And then what I learned very quickly was that, to convince Steve, it's numbers, right? Numbers, facts. And at the next meeting, I brought forward a full analysis of costs for what he had tabled, and he was the one who made the motion to approve it. So I learned very quickly, Steve's meticulous, he's detailed, he wants to see the numbers, he wants to see the costs and benefits. And if you can lay that out in a logical way, then it's not hard to get him on board with something that you want to do. And so that attention to detail, that kind of fact-based, that judgment, the advice he would give as we were going through our capital planning with the costs that he was seeing in the industry, I certainly appreciated them. I know Dwayne certainly appreciated them when we were going through that, and he could give us insight into things that we had not yet seen because he was seeing it in real time in the private sector of things before we would get to our project time period. So very grateful for your service. Thank you very much. And it's always a little tough to lose one of the people that was involved in the hiring of myself, but I'm quite grateful for the opportunity that you played a role in giving me, and I'm hopeful that we stay in touch.
Thank you.
Any others want to speak? All right. seeing
Just a
none-
thank you.
Oh, yeah,
and
go ahead, Sam.
just-
Yeah.
Just a thank you, and it's been a pleasure, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, my last thought will be, knowing that you're going to be off, spending a lot more time on your bike and maybe going to Alaska, may the road rise up to meet you and give you, wind always be at your back. So thank you again, Steve, for your many years of service to the city of Lake Mills. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.